Okay, chapter 5. Okay, here we go. The scope of testing. On 4.1, when we get into it a little bit later on, we'll talk a little bit more about this. But the scope of certification testing should be driven by the entire range of control requirements applicable to the system. So, technically, when you're out there in the field, you're going to have 120 controls that are around that you're going to have to deal with. In this class, I'm just making you look at 50, okay? You need to understand all the requirements applicable to that system. These requirements are described in previous chapters, stem from a minimum baseline security baselines, and adopted by organizations and adjusted for controls determined by the risk of that system. Remember, when you categorize the system as a high, medium, or low, and then you did the risk assessment against it, that kind of gives you an idea of how your system is. Normally, control requirements are documented to the security plan, which y'all already did, right? Y'all documented your controls in part of your security plan. And that will compromise the scope of the certification testing. Does that make sense? Your security plan that y'all developed says, here's all we're going to do, and here's how we're going to do it, and here's the system, all the system information that was put together. Does that make you understand a little bit better about how pieces are starting to fit together? You know, you were getting this piece, and like I like to say, catching flies, right? Because you're out here just doing this kind of thing, grabbing. Now you're starting to see how they're all forming together into bigger documents. We have what we call a level of effort for testing. Low intensity means you can interview the person. You can review those documents that we talked a little bit about last week, and you can observe the system or examine, right? Very low level stuff. Then you get to the more moderate. Now you start getting into your automated tools with your regression testing and your functional testing. You got to demonstrate that these security controls actually will meet the minimum requirements. High, you do a lot more. Does that make sense? The higher the system, the more you're going to do. More higher effort, obviously, that's where it comes from. Assessor independence. Do you want someone to assess your system that's in your organization? Yes or no? Tell me.
Yes.
No, you do not. You do not want someone, because if I come back and I audit you, you can be sued. Assessors, that's why I say it's assessor independent. If I'm assessing to validate your system, you have to hire an auditor. Like if you're a CPA, you have to hire an auditor to come out from another institution to audit your books to make sure they're correct. Same idea, same concept. You have to take someone to come out and assess all to make sure your controls are valid.
Well, if you're a real small company,
You still legally you're required to do so. If you're going to be a true certified system. If you do want to.
I'm going by what it says in the book.
No. If you are a mom and pop shop, you're still required, in order to have a certified system, yes, you have to have an independent contractor come and validate your controls that are on that system. Do mom and pop systems really do it? Absolutely not. A, they don't have the money or the time, and their systems are not that important. When you have a Chesapeake system, you're going to have someone from Devon come over and assess it. Kind of thing, okay? You're going to have another big company come and evaluate you. Certification testing is different in that it's not performed often. It is more rigorous and conducted by an independent entity. Why? Do you want someone that has never seen your system before, knows absolutely nothing about it, because they're going to tell you the truth. They're going to say, Josh, that is a puke red shirt, okay? Is an example. Now, is it really? I don't know. I don't really care. But the point is, you had someone independent tell you they don't like your shirt, or you didn't do it correctly, right? As compared to Thomas and Cody are in the same group. Hey man, I'll take you to dinner if you pass my system.
Yeah.
Are you going to get that out of an independent tester? No. They're going to, trust me, they'll document it that you try to bribe them. I've done it before. Developing a test plan. All you're doing is planning for a certification testing task. The certifying agent must consider a multitude of task requirements, issues that affect the successful completion of that test. Okay? Now, what's the first thing that they need to do? They need to develop a test plan. How are we going to test this system? I know it sounds rudimentary and elementary, right? Give me a step-by-step process of how you're going to evaluate my system. That's a test plan. That's all it is. And it makes sure that your test plan incorporates anyone that could feasibly have a part of your certification of your system. So you want to make sure that Cole, who's the CEO of the company, is aware of this testing, and that it might affect their business operations while they're running automated tools. It could possibly take down their system for a day. So when is he going to say, well, why don't you schedule it overnight so that you don't have that process interfering with my business operations? Okay? Procedures employed to test individual controls need to be comprehensive and complex enough to determine if the controls meet the minimum test standard. So, in that NIST document, when you created your 50 controls, you had that big paragraph to tell you what that control has to do. Okay? And there's some yes or no questions throughout there. Did it meet this certain, those subparagraphs that you all had to write out? Does it meet those levels? And you need to tell me if the vulnerabilities are in the system controls. Is a fire extinguisher in date? Is it within reach of a server system? Is it even the right type of fire extinguisher? I.e., I showed y'all my latest security audit, right? That company failed horribly. They had 3 out in the warehouse of over $14 million worth of books, 3 of which are out of date. Now, the pressure was fine, but they were out of date. They hadn't been tested and validated. Can I pass that control? No. Anything wrong with it, you have to say no, because they have to make sure they understand it. If you fudge that, then the next person that comes to audit that system and says, oh, well, that auditor didn't know what he was talking about, your name is going to get around that you don't know what you're talking about. You don't want that. But you also want to make sure that you are as hard on those controls as possible, because you want the system to be as secure as possible, yet functional. Okay? The role of a host. How many of you have ever gone to a business to do any type of transaction? They're your host, right? You go to 7-Eleven all the time. That's probably not a good excuse or a good business, but anyway, their floors are usually clean. There's not water on it like Walmart during the frozen food area. Okay. You have the host organization is responsible to ensure that you are taken care of, all your needs are met, everything's done in a timely and efficient manner. I've been to organizations, a specific one, a couple times, and they don't have anything. They don't care. Will you do a security audit? Sure, I'll do a security audit, but they don't really know what a security audit entails. And when I give them my documentation, a 4-inch binder of just an 8-hour day, they haven't read it yet, and that was over a year ago. They haven't implemented any of the control recommendations that I had in there for them. Test execution. What does that simply mean? That just means you've created your test that's been created, that you are conducting it, and the results should immediately be recorded, because what happens? If you're in the middle of a test and you just finished it and you haven't recorded it, that power is going to go out while you go to the bathroom. Guaranteed. Just kind of if it's going to go wrong, it's going to go wrong right when you, oh yes, I got it. So that's why you like to use automated tools on your own personal computers, especially laptops, so that has a battery on there for a couple hours. Smart way of doing it. Deviations of conditions specified in the plan should be put in there in case they are observed. In the event of a power failure, we will be conducting this on such and such date. You need to tell them how you're going to do it, when you're going to do it, and any exceptions to your plan also should be noted. Go with me? Documenting test results. You'll get to see this in 4.2. Once certification testing has been completed, the test team will gather and analyze all those results. That's that 4-inch binder I was talking about. Collectively record the results of the testing. They should be done by completing the previously submitted and approved test plan. Here's the test plan. Here's what I've done. Here is what I saw. Raw data collected should be transferred into a document that typical end users can read and understand. Okay? Woohoo!
That's an awesome ringtone, man. There you go.
Okay. You should do it immediately following that test so that it's fresh on your mind and fresh data. Okay? Once you get all this done, you're going to scan it, review it, make sure you have it documented and saved. Then you're going to present it. Okay? So for task 1, you are to develop, review, and approve a plan. I will do the approval when you submit it. So develop and review a plan for assessing your 50 security controls that will protect that system. You're going to tell me how are you, basically you're developing a test plan. Simple. And a security assessment plan documents the objectives for the security control assessment. So you're going to tell me, hang on Kelly, you're going to tell me exactly what is the goal and the purpose of this assessment, how you're going to conduct this assessment, and then tell me how you're going to do each one of the controls. Now just remember, last week you did, whether you were examining, documenting, things of that nature, right? You're going to collectively take those and put them in here and say, here is how I'm going to validate your system, but here's the scope of it, here's how I'm going to do it. Does that make sense? If you're going to do interviews, I'm going to set a 1-week time period to do all the interviews for the ISSO. You list all the different people you want to interview. Does that make sense? Like I said, the ones that you did last week, if you did it right, will come in very handy this week. Okay? Everyone understand task 4.1?
Can we use the template? Like the FedRAMP or
If you want to use a template, so long as it gives the documents the objectives, details how you're going to do your test plan, and how you're going to record your assessment procedures. For interviewing, we're going to interview and here's all my controls that I'm going to interview with. Does that make sense? For documentation purposes, we're going to be looking at any types of policies and procedures. Here are the ones that we will look for documentation on.
do you need to know specifically what documentation you're looking for?
You could be specific. You can say any policy or procedure because each one of those are going to be a different format anyway. You can specify, if you're out, when you're out there in the field, specify a security plan must cover these topics. This is going to cover these topics. And kind of give them a template of what you're looking for. So that when they give you a disaster recovery plan, does it meet all the requirements of that control? Does that make sense? Right here, I'm just trying to get you to understand that these are the 3 things that I'm going to be looking for on this particular assignment. Task 4.2. You're going to conduct, which you don't have a system to do against, an assessment of the security system controls in accordance with the assessment procedures the way you did it in 4.1. So now you're going to conduct what you just wrote me in your test plan. Do y'all get that? So if you're going to interview, you say, we interviewed Jim Bob Thornton, CEO of Microsoft.com. Such and such, such and such. Give me their name, give me their position, and what you did. If you looked at a specific policy, a disaster recovery plan, then you will say underneath the documentation area, when we were doing this, we reviewed these documents that were held in such and such's office, or in a approved fireproof safe in such and such room or whatever. Then you're going to tell me, this is where I told you, you're going to tell me your 10 that failed. Okay? You're looking at all 50 of these controls. 10 of these will fail on this section. So what you're going to do on 4.2, let's see, we have AC1, AC2, AC3. This is a fail. pass, pass. So when you list the control name, and you can tell me whether it passed or not. You have to have a minimum of 10 that failed out of those minimum of 50 that you have. Yes, Kelly?
Even for pass and fail, if one was an interview, you want who you interviewed. If one was, if like AC2 was documentation, was the way you were going to assess it, so you put down the documentation you looked at.
Right.
Passed.
Uh-huh. And that's all you have to...
AC3, you tested it, it failed.
Right. You tell me what method you
If we
used.
use the automated testing, do you want the name of the tool that we use?
Yes. That's part of your test plan, is you're going to tell me how you're doing these. If you're going to interview, you're telling me who you're interviewing and how you're interviewing. If you're documenting, what kind of policies or procedures are you going to look for? If you're using an automated tool, what automated tools are you using? If you're examining things, what kind of, or how are you examining them? Do you have a template that you're looking in comparison to? You know, tell me very specifically how you're going to test these controls. That's part of 4.1. Okay? Security controls assessment to determine if the controls are implemented correctly. That's 1. That pass-fail. Are operating as intended. It's a pass-fail. And meet the security requirements of that system. Does that make sense? So long as they pass all 3 of these areas, then you tell me they passed and tell me how you validated that they passed. Does that make sense? So it's going to 4.1 and 4.2 are going to go almost hand in hand. Basically, 4.1 you develop the test plan and say here are all the controls that are going to be in these areas, and then 4.2 you're going to tell me that these controls in these areas either passed or failed. In if it's documentation, which documentation did you look at? If you interviewed who? Okay, does that make sense? Most all your interviews will never fail.
Better not.
Most all of them will never fail. I say almost. You're going to get someone that's a liar. 4.3. Now, here comes the easy part. You're going to prepare a security assessment report to document your issues, findings, and recommendations of that assessment in 4.2. So now you're going to tell me we found out of the 70 controls, 14 of them failed. The ones that passed are AC1, AC2, AC3, AC4, AC whatever. The ones that failed were these and why they failed. Okay, you need to identify them. The security assessment report is prepared to document the results of the security control assessment, including recommendations for correcting those that failed. Hint, hint, hint. Make sure that you have that recommendation. Don't just say they failed. I will knock you half of your grade automatically. I want to know, you're telling me they failed, now tell me how you're going to fix it. You give me a summary of which ones they've done. And mind you, these are all the fails. 4.3 is only dealing with failures. It does not include your successes. Because you're going to write this up and to put it into a poem. Plan of actions and milestones, okay? You've got to tell me what recommendation you're going to use. And then 4.4, you're going to conduct an initial remediation actions from that poem relative to the security controls based on those findings. So all this is saying is, can I try to get it fixed? Remember, if it's a Cat 1 failure, you have to fix it immediately. If that team leaves, your system is non-certified. If it is a Cat 2, you have 6 months to fix it. Cat 3, you may not have the legal terminology correct. Okay? Is that going to cause the system to be down? No. Cat 1, you're being attacked very quickly. Okay? You need to report and reassess once you take remediated actions. You're going to cause 5 of them to pass of those 10 that had failed. So half of how, if you say we had 20 failures, then only half of those are going to be fixed on the first go around of the poem. Does that make sense? So that will leave you with 10 more failures, and then you're going to reassess those remediated controls after you've done your remediation. And then you're going to say, oh, 10 more failed, or half of whatever was of the original failures still a failure. Now you're going to look at those, and we're going to look at your system very closely after that, okay? Does anyone have any questions on task 1 through 4?
So on 4.3, how many failures are we supposed to have?
A minimum of 10.
Okay. Got it.
And so if you have 20, then on this part, you'll list your 20. Well, on 4.3, you'll list your 20. But on 4.4, you're going to fix 10 of those and say you fixed them, and you're going to tell me how you fixed them.
Got it.
You're going to try to remediate all 20, but then you're going to tell me that those other 10 failed again.
Got it.
Because you either didn't have the tools, this hard, let's say one drive on your one system failed, and you can't get that hot swappable drive in time before I leave. Well, that's a category 1. So, do you want that failing, a remediated failure? No, you can say, I got it in overnight. Dell's warranty is actually cool. We got it within, on site within 24 hours.
They are actually pretty good.
I know. That's why I was saying it. Is there any other questions on that? No? None? Going once? Going twice? October 7th. I may or may not be here. If I'm not going to be here, I will have I will let you know by next week. Okay? Because October 7th is 2 weeks from now. What you do is you'd still work with your groups on your outside. You just have an extra time to work together. If y'all, since you're already class, if y'all want to come up here and get like 214 or 220 or
It's going to be sick.
no, I'm not. I'll be out here calling umpire. Like I said, I'll let you know. Okay. But still plan on being here until I tell you otherwise. I'm also have a possibility of being. There's 2 different reasons why I may not be here. More than likely, I won't be here on the 7th anyway. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. I'll let you know next week definitely. All right. And I will also put a note out there. You'll do your outside lab activity with your group. So y'all can still come up here and be in a classroom during that time. You just won't be in this physical room. I can go over 214 where we started with, and you can break into your groups, or you can meet at IHOP. I don't care. Those are the things that you need to think about. Any other questions, concerns, gripes, moans, complaints? Nope. Alrighty then.